How do you get the value out of your business? Because at some point, the asset outgrows the weight of, I could pull off a salary every year out of the business, but man, I could sell my business for $100 million. Do I entrust my children to do that, or are we taking care of for generations and generations and generations?
A lot going on in private equity right now. Gregg Schonhorn from SF&P Advisors is going to help you understand the nuances. There's a bunch of platforms in roofing right now. This is only a small handful that's pictured if you're watching the visual, from IHS to Legacy to Omnia to Vertex, and there's so many more that are out there that are buying right now. And we're going to talk through that big graphic that's circulated out on Facebook, what it means for roofing right now, as well as a couple companies that just went under the platform of Nucco, that in Minnesota Rusco was a big one. Greg, what was the one over in East Coast?
Well, it's Renovo Home Partners, that the parent company of Nucco in Boston, that had pulled people off the job, and I think it was like 1,400 jobs wiped out in a second.
Why does this happen? That's what we're going to talk about, and how you can do your best to avoid selling to somebody who might liquidate your company or things like that. Maybe it's not liquidation, but something happens, and then boom, a legacy is gone, and you kind of. That's what one major thing people worry about. Yes, we want the bag. We want to get the bag when you sell and you get that moment. But how can you avoid selling to one of these companies if they're going to let your whole family, like for a while you build this company, it's kind of your family. I know it's not really, but it feels like that. How do you avoid selling to somebody who's going to kind of drop that?
Join us January 5th through the 7th at Oklahoma City Convention Center for RoofCon 2026. It's going to be amazing. I hear there's somebody special that's going to be keynoting there. I'm going to be speaking. It's going to be really, really fun. And the best part is not even the speakers at events like this. Bringing the roofing industry together, talking about all the most cutting edge technologies and new methods, the best people in the industry sharing great information, as well as having community. That's what it's all about, having community and creating relationships. So join us. That's January 5th through the 7th at Oklahoma City Convention Center.
Yeah, I think it's really important, Tim, to start, thanks for having me on, trying to set up, I think of the Saturday Night Live 5 Timers Club. I'm on a path where I'm trying to be on at least 5 times to get my silk hook jacket in my private room at the Hook Agency would be great. So I appreciate that in our friendship. But, what's on here is just a portion of really what's out there. As many people pointed out, there's tons of commercial businesses. There's a lot of businesses that aren't specifically on this graphic. Like, they missed a lot, but it's really hard to encompass all that's going on. I think what you see here in this graphic is the major strategic players. I think as we wrapped up a little bit before, we were talking whatever the number is, let's call it 23. When I send out a non-disclosure, blind teaser out, it's going to 120, 130 different buyers in the roofing space. These aren't the only buyers that exist. These are the larger strategics that you could probably trust the best. These probably have the best chance of winning, but they're not the only game in town as far as solutions. You still have people from other verticals that haven't even built their platforms yet, that are looking to build platforms. But when I look at this graphic, I see a very small percentage of roofing businesses. Like you had said, you feel like things are really hot, they're on fire in roofing. Man, I still feel like we're 5 years behind HVAC, plumbing, and electric in the roofing space. And we're just beginning the cycle of, another larger percentage of roofing businesses being done over the next 2-3 years. I had a call this morning with somebody who asked the question, I don't want to miss out. Let me tell everybody right now, you are not missing out. We are not going to see multiples fall. It's just not, we're in a really steady, solid pattern. I do believe at some point somebody will go public. I don't know who that can be. You want me to guess? I'll guess, like maybe a wrench or somebody. And I think that will be our next large gold rush.
Does Wrench has a roofing?
So wrench does it, but it's still somebody's got to hit the public markets, right? So when I think of HVAC, plumbing, and electric, wrench, Apex, who knows who it's going to be, right? But I
There's a
think
lot of
that's
people that might watch this they're actually thinking about going. I mean, maybe not a lot, but there'll be a few that are thinking about coming over. Recently, what we're talking about, where these stuff fails, AirPros on the HVAC side. This is not just roofing, and I think some people could have said that because it was a weird year for roofing, and it was a little less sturdy, and there's nothing wrong with the up and down. I've been telling people this that are private equity related. It's like, it's nothing wrong with the up and down in roofing. It's just part of it. It sucks, but it is part of it. And you can't completely iron that out with just going really hard on retail. It's still, the demand goes up when there's more leaks, and there's more leaks when there's more storms. So
yep.
there's going to be some of that. There's going to be off years. There's been lower consumer confidence. That's a little bit like clear at this point in the year. You know, I don't know why, but it felt like there's a couple months ago, a lot of people seem to say people aren't buying roofs. But that happens in every industry too. There's a chunk of people that are all like, I don't know, maybe people changed and there's just not going to be as many roofs. It's like, we're down 10%. Okay, relax.
Right. And HVAC feels the same. Roofing feels that way. But take a look at, government closure, all these people out of work, for the first time, the stock market's not at an all-time high. People are starting to worry. Plus, we're in spending season, right? We spend more than ever on Thanksgiving. We spend more than ever during Christmas season. Most people don't know if they'll have a job. And every day you hear, Amazon laid off X amount, 140,000 employees. So you're going to see jobless claims continue to rise. What does that look like, and how does that impact people's spending on an everyday? Kind of one of the last things you're worried about is your roof, right? If it's leaking, that's one thing. Now, if it leaks into the house and doing damage, that's very different than when your HVAC or your heat doesn't work and it's boiling hot or cold. It's a higher priority than, you got a couple of holes in your roof, and if they're not feeling the pain of what that feels like, they might opt to delay and push that off. You are in a challenging time in economy where we are now, that it feels like, yeah, things could slow down, but demand is demand. And I think in the Midwest, what we were talking about earlier, some of the platforms that have bought, and I'll talk your specific Minnesota region, have been challenged. And any roofer who's watching this from the Midwest will tell you the storms have not been there in the last year and a half. And that's causing some problems. So when, people have come to me, we're looking to sell our business. And I say, man, you've got 1.7 million of EBITDA in 2023, 2.6 million of EBITDA in 2024. And this year you're trending 1.8. I have to take an average of 3 years. And they're like, no, I want to sell it on my trailing 12. And that includes the 2.8. I think I should be at 2.3. And I'm like, hire somebody else. Nobody's going to buy a business because you had all these acts of God. You haven't proven out that those storms are going to continue. So you have to be reasonable and thoughtful around the process that you're doing and what your expectations are. You can't have one amazing year where, we had 3 big storms. I tripled my revenue. Now I want to sell and get the full value of that. That's not reality in the roofing world. And if there's other brokers that want to tell you, or other advisors, to use the proper term, they're full of crud.
I want to get into this topic. I know I just have to give some rumors and so Minnesota Rusco is a big topical thing for a lot of roofers in my area right now. And we talked about Nucco, and on the East Coast, there was people under this umbrella. There's a lot I think the top of the heap is BlackRock. And a family business was destroyed. There was seemingly something squandered, because I think everyone around here knows that company, Minnesota Rusco, not the greatest brand in the world, but people know it, and it was respected in our area. And people felt blindsided that worked there. And there's rumblings, and I have to say hearsay, just like something heard, this podcast is for entertainment purposes. None of
Okay.
our advice is lawful or whatever. It's all our we are intending to entertain you. That maybe that was done on purpose. Maybe that was done on purpose to offset, because like if you have a asset, if you have too many assets and things, this side's up and this side's going down anyways, you could chop something and take that as a loss, so you don't have to, it's like a tax game. So the real question though is not like, did that happen exactly like that? The real question is, how do you partner with somebody who's less likely to squander this asset? Because I think what I would ever want if I ever sold my company is continuity. Not that every single last person in the company could never get fired. The point is like, is generally the idea, let's say we have like a kind of a golden rule style policy towards customers, and generally we try to be thoughtful about the way if we have to let go of anyone or those types of things. How do you keep some continuity in deals? Like if you sell your company, and how do you not totally second question.
No, there's two great questions.
Continuity, and how do you stop yourself from taking a financial major hit because they squandered your asset a couple years in? Because this was like 2 years in, I believe, from Minnesota.
Yeah. So, as I love to say, and I already mentioned this, right? We're 5 years behind where HVAC, plumbing, and electric is in the roofing space. So I think what happens is you'll hear stories, and for those people familiar with HVAC, plumbing, and electric, know Apex might have, let's make up a number, 300 million, 400 million of EBITDA. So if they buy somebody and the asset just isn't great and it doesn't work, you'll hear the horror story of this shop in Utah just closed. And I'm not saying that was Apex. But when you have that kind of EBITDA, does giving up a $2 million or $3 million EBITDA business matter? It's a rounding error, right? So I think as roofing starts to mature, I think the reason this graphic gives you 23 strategics is because they are perennially known as the largest, major, most sturdy buyers. So when I start talking about I've got another 100 buyers behind that, now we start getting into some of them towards the back end. What kind of debt are they using? What does it look like? What are their payments? Are there things tied where revenue drops and EBITDA drops that it kicks some covenants that trips debt covenants, and all of a sudden companies wiped out, which is to a large degree part of what happened with AirPros. So when I think you look at Alloy and you look at Vertex, they're part of the whole. One is Apex, right? And, there's much larger beasts behind them. This is just their roofing portion of the parent company, right?
The company above Apex and Vertex, is that one related? And that one's above Alloy as well?
I'm not sure which one is Apex. I think Apex
that was related in the Air Solutions thing, or
no? That has nothing to do with AirPros whatsoever. But you had essentially what happened was it was more self-funded, smaller funded. They had these floating rate notes, and when the EBITDA dropped, it kicked a whole bunch of debt covenants, and it was gone.
So there are certain structures of debt that you have to look at what their structure of debt is, and kind of understand that a little bit to know that, like, how, and the covenants that you're mentioning, not that I'm an expert on it, but if you know that and you look into that a little bit more, you can kind of see if it's weak.
Yeah, to people that aren't using a professional advisor like SF&P that go at it alone, that respond to these emails, there are buyers out there that are self-funding, or they're funding through different loans or friends or whatever. And if you don't understand how they're funding, when I look at Alloy or Stronghouse or Vertex, I know how they're funding and I have no fears, right? So that's typically why these tend to be the main buyers. When you go further down into the world, the question is, where is the debt coming from, what covenants are around it, and understanding the structure of that. Sometimes you're just responding to emails and they're not the 23 main strategics, and you really don't know who you're selling to. And then you're taking a true risk. That's why vetting as many of these as possible. And then you brought up a great point. The second point about how do I know if it's a fit and continuity is what you said. And that's really why typically for us, you sell your roofing business, you're going to go meet somewhere between 10 to 14 different buyers. And we're going to talk about things like culture and core values. And, if I go look at this list and I look at, Alloy, let's say, and it's Ibex and Munns and some of these others, I'm going to want to talk to the owner of Munns. I'm going to want to talk to the owner, Kirk, over at Ibex and understand what the transition looked like. How did it feel? What were the pain points? What typically took place during the first 6 months I need to worry about, right? Some of the much bigger ones like Vertex, who's got a ton, they're typically only going to give you the people that they know are going to speak positively, which should be most, I would hope. But you've got to do your due diligence as well and check in with the other owners. And when we run the process, every one of these buyers will give you referrals, who you could talk to and what their experience is like. The horror stories we hate hearing, but it's such a small percentage of all the transactions that take place. It just makes news, especially in Minnesota, because it hits home. And Boston, you had 1,400 guys, 1,400 total employees lose their job in a day, and they're out on sites. Some of them, they're in the middle of doing demolition, and it's like, drop your Milwaukee tubes, come back to the office, and everybody comes back and everybody's crying, and we close the doors. Who's going to finish all that work? Who's got all the liability? It is an absolute mess and a shit show, and it's horrible to see.
Does your company want to build your brand and get more jobs in the neighborhoods you're currently working in?
The Brick by Brick playbook allows you to establish your brand, your reputation, and gain trust in any neighborhood in your service area with a series of 4 postcards sent once a week to the neighbors of your current jobs. If you want to get more work in the neighborhoods you're currently working in, get with the team at Dope Marketing and get your Brick by Brick playbook set up today.
Can you give me a little bit of a story behind one of your recent posts? You said, PSA, if someone approaches you and says, hey, let's get 7, 8, 10, 20 businesses together and sell them as one, 98% of the time, it is a BS con job and will never work without a proper strategy behind it. I, and maybe some other less sophisticated people in private equity dealings, may look at every private equity roll up, it looks like that to us. So what's the difference between what you're talking about and a legitimate, you know what I mean? Like, what is the difference?
No, and I get it. So I'm not talking about private equity. I'm talking about guys that are saying, what if I take these 7, 8, 9 businesses, combine them into one? Hey, you've got $1 million of EBITDA. You've got 2 million. You've got $1 million. And if we get 10 million of EBITDA, we'll get a much higher multiple than we will as individuals. All signs fine and dandy until you get to the fine print. And the fine print is you're giving up a portion of ownership that you should never, ever do. And there's 6, 7 strategic steps that matter. So I'm working with the company in Utah. I'm working with the company in Colorado that do roofing, that are trying to make strategic acquisitions to better themselves, to have a better outcome. Great. So as we talk about, we're going to buy a business. Are you on Job Nimbus? Or what is your CRM? CRMs have to be identical. Our chart of accounts has to be identical. I cannot have, if there's 8 of them, I can't have 8 CEOs. So I'm going to have one CEO, I'm going to have a COO, and then everybody else is going to be general managers. What does the org chart look like? We have to have the same exact employee handbook in every single solitary office. We have to have the same systems and processes at every single place. We're installing all the same roofs, all the same equipment. They have to live and act like 8 different businesses. And the problem that happened with AirPros that I see in HVAC, plumbing, and electric, some of these platforms, and what's beginning to happen now is this scourge, whatever you want to call it, it's coming to roofing, where guys are saying, if we put all these brands together, Well, there's a reason AirPros failed, because they kept them as 8 separate businesses. And if you say, oh, we're on the same accounting software, doesn't mean jack squat. It's not enough. It doesn't work. It's unsellable. The business owners are giving their life's work away, and it's completely unsellable.
I almost want to bring up examples, specific ones, if I could. I'm scared though, because they're ones I like, and I don't want you to rip them. I see some like what level of integration is absolutely required is what I'm getting at, because I've seen. It feels like what you're saying is, talk about enterprise value. Enterprise value means combining back-end systems. That's what it feels like, and I might be oversimplifying, but means combining back-end systems. And if you're not combining back-end systems and you're running them as separate businesses, there's less enterprise value, and the value actually doesn't go up to buyers. So watch for those types of, and where's the line? Because then I'll see other ones where it's like they're meeting weekly as the leaders of those companies. They look a little bit like CEOs still, but they're good companies. They are combined, and they have, like, let's say some combined systems, but not all the way 100%. Like, where's the line?
It's a great question, and it's hard not to have 2, 3, 4 on the top of my head, and I will never name names, and I don't care how many people ask it. I'm staying away from that conversation. If you've got, let's say we've got 10 businesses, we'll use even math. 4 of them are responsible for 90% of your EBITDA. The other 6 are, I don't know, 0 EBITDA to 200-300 grand, which are, for most part, for an SF&P, unsellable assets, or they might be sellable through somebody who does those tiny small deals. But if they're not fully integrated, running as one machine, right? So when an Apex or an Alloy or Vertex buys you, what makes them the ability to buy you and save money? They have the power to buy, because they're all want to install all the same roofs, shingles, whatever we're putting in for the strength of them. We're going to use one operating system. So HVAC, plumbing, electric, service, Titan, right? The whole, everybody pays $250 a month. PE roomer, they pay $91, $92. So their buying power is what makes them a strength. Their back-end accounting, insurance, healthcare, all of these things become on one platform. And what I have seen in a lot of these attempts at platform is, we've got 8 separate businesses. You're going to use, let's say, my accountant, and we're all going to use the same accountant, and we're going to charge you for that. That's great, but unless the true chart of accounts is identical, it doesn't work, and it's unsellable. And literally anybody that goes into these deals, you have just given your life's business away, and you got screwed. And it's happening right now, and I'm seeing it in roofing, because I get phone calls on it every day. Should I go with this group or that group or this group? And, I do the best I can to not talk poorly of people. I'd rather give examples of, here are the things that I would ask and the questions I would ask to see if it works. I mean, the questions that are important: will we all be using the same employee handbooks? Will we all have the same exact commission models? If I've got 8, 10 roofing businesses, every single companies need to be identical. If I walked in blindfolded, I wouldn't know any difference between any of them. Their inspection process is the same. Their sales training is the same. Commission model is the same. The GM KPIs are identical at every single business. We're only buying from the same suppliers. We have the same chart of accounts. All of this stuff is critically important. It's the only way it works. I'll throw one name out there, because I said it to you earlier. I look at a Grasshopper, and I think they're doing things the right way. They're buying unique, weird, strange, different kind of businesses in the HVAC space, but what they're doing from the back end and how they're growing and scaling it is really done well. And I'm also biased because, once in a while they will call for some advice. Not a client of ours or anything like that, but, they are doing things the right way from a perspective of how they bring people in, how it's one brand. It just works. And these other guys that are trying to do it, that 98% of them, they're going to fail and they're going to destroy your business, and you will not get the value out of them that you're expecting to get.
It's almost like if you were planning to hold for a little while and appreciate some of the enterprise value, it would be a better way to look at it versus like we're just getting all this together to sell it. So like because then you'd necessarily combine stuff to make sure it was creating that value, right? Like thinking back about that chart that we were looking at,
Yep.
with all those there was a reaction in the roofing industry to that. And, it's every Tom, Dick, and Sally that has an opinion about private equity that maybe doesn't have a lot of context, but there's like a fear, I would say, a fear that expresses itself in distrust about private equity. And when something happens like Minnesota Rusco, and people can have a very clear example of something squandered, it's like there's a feeding frenzy of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt in and around private equity. And have you, like, you're talking to people with $1, $2, $5 million EBITDA, a lot, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Is that happening for that group of people, or is it just the like randoms on the internet that are so mistrusting, or does that extend, and how do you deal with that with the $1.5 million?
You're typically not reaching out to me to have a conversation if you're the naysayer. Now, to the naysayer, it's hard to argue, right? But there are family offices. Like if somebody came to me and said, I want to sell my business, I'm looking to sell it to a family office that I know will be there forever, that is not traditional PE, we can run a process that's family office only, that is just buy, hold, grow forever. I had a call with somebody today that's looking for businesses it's Minnesota, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky. They're looking for businesses, happens to be in the commercial HVAC space, but they're doing it from a family office style where there are long-term holdings. A lot of the naysayers, I would ask them, you get to 50 million in revenue and you've got $100 million asset. What do you do with that? I don't know any of the naysayers that are necessarily guys of that size. And if you are we handing them down to the kids? How do you get the value out of your business? Because at some point, the asset outgrows the weight of, I could pull off a salary every year out of the business, but man, I could sell my business for $100 million. Do I entrust my children to do that, or are we taking care of for generations and generations and generations? So you don't just have to sell to PE. There's family offices. There's other ways to exit than just the traditional PE model. But most of the naysayers I find aren't of the much bigger businesses, or they're on the cusp of it where it makes sense to give it to their son or makes sense to keep it in the family for a longer time. And I get that. There's always going to be hard.
But there's a lot of like, I'm $300,000 and I would never like revenue, and I would never sell my business. It's like, no one's asking you to sell your business. You can operate your business and under the radar, and probably in any market in this country, if you work hard, can do $1 million revenue or even $1 million in EBITDA for the most part. If you just keep on trucking and you work hard and you care and you try, like as long as you have decent systems, you can do that stuff. You don't have to, none of this has to hurt you. I think that was something that scared me for a while, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel that most small businesses at the moment, except for like this is a good question. There are markets where it feels like PE is running in and lowering prices to like suck up market share. And then that could hurt people. I haven't seen that in most markets. I just think that it'd be hard in a bigger market or a medium-sized market. It does feel like that is a strategy. Some places they'll go in and they'll kind of lower prices for a little while to like.
I was in an area of North Carolina that's a little isolated last Thursday, Friday, and it's certainly their struggle is the couple of PE companies that are in the market, because I met with 3 different business owners while there, and their struggle was PE just basically started undercutting everything, and they're trying to drive out. And these, let's call them $5, $6, $7 million revenue businesses are struggling because PE's just, I can't win at Google, I can't win at SEO, and I'm being undercut by these guys who are trying to push us out. It's easier to do in a much smaller market than it is, in a Phoenix proper or somewhere like that, right?
What
But
is
there are
the
definitely
play
those
there? Do you
challenges.
just ride it out and take some lower margins for a few years, hoping PE basically can't stay there? They're not going to stay there on pricing forever, right?
So I went back to the fact of, what does your culture look like? What are your core values? What do the conversations look like that we're having? What is the value add that we're having to our people? That when we go into somebody's home and we're having a conversation, I believe culture is everything, right? I truly believe if you've got an incredible culture, it's infectious and everybody believes in the mission, it sells itself when the people go to somebody's home. It shows how much they care about the homeowner. If we're wearing our company core values on our sleeve, I really think some of the companies I met with they've been running a business and been successful. Now they're facing hardship for the first time because PE's, and I'm like, here are the things missing in your business. Here are the challenges that you're suffering. And I think now it's showing up during hard times that you've forgotten some of the basic stuff within your business. And I know, roofing, when I talk to most roofing owners, culture's not always the biggest thing. And the roofing businesses we've represented, culture's been amazing. And we're getting, 8x, 9x multiples for incredible culture, residential retail businesses successfully. And then there's the one where, hey, we've worked 20 years, the community really likes us, but there's no specific, what you're really known for. And I think it's really important, especially for roofing, to go look at some of the larger influencers and what they do on social media in the plumbing, HVAC, electrical space that have really done everything they can to brand themselves in their community, whether it's at home shows, sponsoring, kids softball, making sure you're an integral part of community so that your brand is really well known. Branded, not branded, right?
Yeah, you got
I screwed that up.
a culture that is actually keeping people. You've got clear differentiating features. What do you really know this company for?
Yep.
And you've got community involvement that anchors you there. And that ultimately that is partly what gets more higher ticket. I mean, it's one of those things that gets higher ticket. Like if I don't have to compete because if people really know us and want to buy from us, we don't have to keep dropping our price just to win bids, right? There's no.
So let's talk about that, right? So for a marketing agency, if I'm interviewing a marketing agency, here's a little insider tip. The first question I ask, what's your retention rate? First question I would ask my marketing agency. Tim, what's your answer on that?
About 97%.
Woo!
Yeah.
Does anybody have a clue how incredible that is?
Yeah.
There's a little plug for Hook, right? I mean, it is ridiculous to have a 97% retention rate. 90+% out of a marketing agency is amazing. And I could count in one hand how many of those exist in the United States, right? So you've done something right from a front end, who you are as a human being in person, but it's your whatever you call the nickname or the name of your client facing reps.
Yeah. Account managers.
So your account managers are truly the backbone of your business because that's where your success is really coming from, right? There's no doubt you do a good job for your clients, but your secret sauce has to be, how good are my account managers? Because I'm not on the phone talking to my people all the time. If I'm managing 100 marketing clients at once, it's too many. So how many different clients can one account manager manage? and all of this stuff goes into the mix. So when I think about other businesses, how many sales jobs am I running my guys, or how many tech jobs am I sending my guys on a day? I want my guy to have sole focus on, for HVAC, plumbing, electric, it's 3-4 tech jobs a day. If I'm running a sales guy, I want him to have hours.
Yeah, and I
He's
was
got-
actually just talking about this yesterday at our event. I was talking about Keith Hicks once told me around storms, like even when a storm happens, slow down and have your guys slow down, because it's like ultimately we're creating referrals whenever we when we really slow down and are with the customer, not running to the next house, even though it feels like you're in like one of those money whirlwind machines, like it's also maintaining our long-term reputation, which yes, we haven't been talking about because there's been a little bit less storms, but that is how reputations can get made. Storm chasers have a bad rap, but
Really
people
bad.
that like take good care of people in a moment of crazy need like that and slow down a little bit is really good. And I think we should, even in the Minnesota market, like Colorado had a 4-year drought for a while. 4
Mhm.
years.
Yep.
It's not going to last forever in a storm market. So, I mean, like, I'm not saying there's going to be a big storm July 23rd of 2026, but I am saying, just call that. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like ultimately, like you don't generally, that was unusual, super unusual for Colorado. And that would be super unusual for us if we went 4 years without that. So slow down, stay on top of your reputation, even if you are making money hand over fist. There is a lot more to be made from referrals, and that's whatever your marketing company is.
You went right where my mind was thinking of. What
Yeah.
do you ask for referrals?
Yeah. And
Right?
a lot of people don't, and a lot of people aren't in that mindset. So it's kind of like a coaching thing. We're always trying to get everybody in that mindset, because if you could get one more deal from every deal, it's a big deal.
But I also think roofs are different, right? So if I've got an unbelievable HVAC system, I can't see it. But man, that homeowner that just spent a fortune on this spectacular, gorgeous roof, they don't really love to refer because they don't want somebody to match their amazing roof. So I do think referrals are a little different and a little weirder in the roofing space. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I do kind of consistently hear the pushback of, man, my roof is so different than everybody else's. It looks so unique. Everybody's jealous. I don't want to tell all my neighbors, so all of a sudden all their roofs look like mine.
Yeah.
But
I think that it's ultimately a matter of most people are not referable. They don't have a brand that's sticky. They don't have a name that the customer remembers 2 weeks later. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that you have just like a storm, you have a 2-week window to knock all those doors and get all those leads, where it's going to be the most top of mind. It's the same, the 2 weeks right around the build, when you can really leverage that customer. Now, everyone's going to, everyone pushes back.
Why aren't the owner should be sending a small gift to the homeowner? It's another simple, just whether it's a small gift basket, handwritten letter. There's automations that could take care of that stuff. That's for sure. But these little extra touch points that go a distance further, and I think guys get away from it, and people sort of start taking it for granted the busier they get. Then during lean times, it's like, what did I do in the first place to be successful that I got away from? And it's kind of the things you have to do at $1 million that when you're at 10, you kind of stop doing some of the really extra thoughtful, because you're so grateful for that business as a smaller business that you start losing track as you get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches sometimes. Some people get a little distracted. I'm going to wrap it up here. Gregg, thank you so much for being on. Where can people go to check you guys out?
So the easiest way is shoot me an email at Gregg, Gregg, at sfpadvisors.com. And my cell phone's always best, 973-919-5509. Or just go to the website, sfandpadvisors.com, and say hello.
And tell him that you heard about him here. Ultimately, to me, having somebody alongside your company as you're making this pretty big decision and making sure you're not going in with somebody who's going to squander the asset or diminish your reputation long term, something that you built up with your reputation, your family, those types of things. Just make sure you have some guidance before selling.
Even if you're not selling, I have people come to me all the time and I'm like, we can unlock an extra 4 or 5% in your net by doing certain things with your P&L and balance sheet that will impact you a year or two later. And, if you can add an extra 300-400 grand of EBITDA, I mean, I only work at a success fee, so it doesn't cost you any money. So it's just free advice.
Awesome, Greg. Thank you so much for being on. We'll have you on again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you,
everyone.
buddy.
Bye.
Thank you.
Once you get to know us, there's no reason to buy from anybody else. What we do differently is we do stake in the factory. You're truly buying direct. We don't sell to distribution. We sell to roofers, the people that have been getting hurt for years. You keep getting price increases from suppliers. We do price decreases. We've had about 4 price decreases this year. VanBoxwellBuilding.com. We have a new website, the Amazon type platform. You go right on there, click it, put it in your cart. We can send it to you, or feel free to give us a call. We'll answer any questions for you.
They're so thorough with every detail of the website. Working with Hook, the design is probably 50x better than any other design I've ever had. Their team is super communicative, and I mean this genuinely. I'm happy to pay you guys to work with us. It's been a tremendous experience.